Can you imagine pre-civilization times? No, hang on. Just, if you like, medieval times. You know, before modern technology. So we're going back to, for argument's sake, 1300 and something AD. Well, you're not in a walled city. You're relying at night on your civilization keeping you safe. You live in a village, or a hamlet, or even smaller, a tie of 4 or 5 houses round a little green. This is your life. You born, live and die there for the same family lord of the manor, the big house that's just across the way from, and your security in that is your culture, your civilization. And it's not very secure, of course. Every now and again your country is going to war with a neighbouring country, and that can be devastating, to say the least. Do you see the importance of your culture now? Your society? You know, I mean, you may have an extremely selfish, self-centered, unloving king that rules the country you're in, medieval king. And, you know, his life's a nightmare, probably just as much as yours can be. And you're seeking some way of coping with this. And the way you cope is you conform the culture, both the national culture determined supposedly by the monarch and so on, but really it's determined by its history to date and the way things are in the world. And also the pressure of your immediate community, the people you know and work with in a very, very small scale, feudal type way. Your little hamlet, your little community, your tiny village, perhaps. You might go into town 2 or 3 times a year to the fair, a holy day, festival day. But otherwise, you just work and sleep and get by as best you can and have children and cope with illness and death and work and harvest and problems of harvest and so on. And your animals? Animals are much closer to you than in the modern world. Here we murder them out of hand and eat them. We scarcely give a thought to it. Well, unless you're of a mind to do so. But in those days, well, the cattle might be, in some cultures, downstairs, keeping the place warm. And the heat from the cattle keeps your loft. You live in barns, you and the cattle. You live in the loft and sleep up there and it's warmer. And you know, each cow, each bullock, whatever, each pig perhaps in Northern Europe generates some heat and helps keep you warm. If you've got enough feed for them for the winter. If not, you have to kill them and dry the meat or salt it down or try and preserve it in some way, or well, just get rid of it because you haven't got the feed to get through the winter. Nothing grows in Northern Europe in the winter. It stops. You know, you're lucky if the cabbages are all right. and the diet was something like cabbage stew with carrots that don't look like carrots. And, it's not, I mean, there was bread making, of course, that goes back a long way, but, eating grain is almost for the elite. In some poor countries. Yeah. You just get by, or you don't. The pressures of life are totally different to a modern society. I don't mean there aren't pressures in modern society, goodness. But the pressures they lived under, survival, necessities, they're at that level. What we call needs and necessities, as opposed to wants, desires and luxuries. But not to dismiss the modern situation. I mean, you become unemployed in the modern world and the family collapses, the wife leaves you, the kids turn to crime, and it's just as real. My goodness, it's just as real. May we be filled with compassion and kindness. May we be a joy and a peace, and a light and a blessing. Understanding, compassion. How did I get here? Was I controlling the mind? Am I conscious of the way the dream is unfolding? When you start to ask yourself these questions, my goodness, you start to control the dream. This is life eternal. To know thee, the only true God, in other words, as Heavenly Dad. You need to read John 17 and know it. Marshall, you worship John 17. Don't do what I do then. Do what I tell you. Bless you. Good night. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Yes, to add a note, I at one point listening to this, I just wanted to say, the pressure to conform in the modern world, see, our security is the society around us, whether you think it's a mix of good and bad or whatever you think. You're heavily, overwhelmingly affected by how the neighbours are, how the employer is, how the shops are, etc., etc. We know this. If we influence its relationship to us, it affects us dramatically. God knows this too. He's done this in anticipation of such, presumably. You're thinking of an all-powerful, all-loving God. It's not meant to be a curse. It's meant to be a teaching situation, as I understand it. I don't think in the Jesus story we have Jesus emphasizing it's a teaching situation. I suppose the life of being a teacher and a lecturer myself, and a dad, oh my goodness. The age span of my kids is at present from 12 years of age, my daughter, to my son who's probably, could be 52 by now, my eldest son, and a son in the middle. I've been a dad continuously for much longer than perhaps most people, and of course involved with kids in education, secondary age kids. My values are obviously affected by my experience in the world, aren't they? And yours too. Are they the same lessons? Yes and no. Perhaps different according to what our needs were when we came to this universe, I'm assuming that if God's eternal, his children are too, and we are his children. Even if you don't think we are until we've seen the light, so to speak, got converted, been born again. we are still, in our understanding, I think, Judaic understanding, all things were made by him, and without him was nothing made that was made. Something like that of the scripture, isn't it? Oh yeah, Old Testament scripture in this case. You could say God uses this environment, this society, to provide us the things we want, like security and food and so on. It's as if civilization is actually localized in earlier days. Your immediate community was vitally important. You worked with them, you almost slept with them, they were in close proximity and you knew each other. Strangers you were cautious with. We're still cautious with strangers in the modern world because they can affect our welfare. It's just that most of the modern world is strangers, and we're meeting an enormous number of strangers every day. I mean, in an urban environment especially, you see. Where's a nice little country town? Even when you've been there a while, you get to know people. There are relationships, you know where to go and who to ask. And you're in a cooperative, you're extending self. But you can't extend yourself into an urban environment that's forever changing, forever moving on. And you too, ever moving into a different part of that urban environment. You don't actually travel with the same person on the train, even with your commuter train. In a simple place like Essex, there's 1,000 people on that train. And they're going through perhaps your local station every 5 minutes in rush hour. More frequent if it's the underground. You don't know these people. And some of them look very dodgy, and some of them are, just by appearance, you just think, I don't know what that is, I'll be cautious. You don't want your daughter travelling on her own as a 10 or 12-year-old on the underground. I'll come with you, darling. No, I can manage, Dad. I know how to do it. Yes. I'll still come with you. We haven't found a way of being civilized in this situation. We're falling back on what the state can do. And it's not necessarily generously funded, because the ones that are funding it perhaps are not really those that are benefiting from it. Or it's the other way around. It's a police service that very much protects the rich, but not the poor. In fact, it actually gives up on some neighbourhoods and just lets the gang run the place. You could say that's community. Yes, frightening, isn't it? I remember Jaywick in Clacton. It had notices in the windows of all the hovels. Paid up member of the local, what do they call it? Housing association or community something or other. I don't know what it was called now. What it really meant was, I'm part of the gang. Don't touch me. I've paid up, I've paid for my security. Well, yes, that is a form of security and it is a form of civilization, but it's a bit like living in a bribery culture. It's not the most efficient and effective by any means, but it's better than nothing, where there would just be barbarous uncertainty. Well, it's pretty barbarous and it is uncertain, but nothing like as bad as it would be without it. You have the protection of the gang, or at least you have their word for what it's worth, that they won't rob you. It's not called the urban jungle for nothing, and it's not just because of the millions of road signs and the way the traffic's organised. And then, of course, there's the obvious. If your society's in decay because of confusion of values with many different cultures and many different teachings and many different
philosophies and religions and so forth. And perhaps a media that emphasizes self and self-interest and perhaps greed. It all contributes to not a culture at all, but a decaying culture, a falling apart. Ah, you're being very negative, Marsha. It's lovely out there. No, nobody's claiming that, are they? Nobody's claiming it's lovely out there. You can certainly see some things that have improved. Your comforts in many ways have improved in general for most people. The poor are still very much relatively poor, but they usually have some sort of accommodation, or at least the car they're living in is something better than living under a hedge. Yeah, okay. I see what you mean. The Jesus story says very simply, I am come that you might have life, life abundant, even life eternal. It gives a hope that political correctness will never give. Well, that's a bit negative, isn't it, Marsha? But it doesn't look very promising, does it? You know, for many people in the community, especially the poorer people, the state is the enemy, not the friend. And you might feel the state's doing all it can to be the friend of the people. And in a sense it is, but inequality and self-interest unquestionably still rules, doesn't it? What do you think? I think in a way you could say the development of political correctness is because there's now a dearth in value structuring in the community, because such as it was, the religions are nonetheless heavily eroded now, and political correctness is some sort of attempt to, well, you could say control the people, or you could say rescue the people. May depend on how you see it. If you're poor and deprived, I think you see it in a negative way. It's yet another imposition upon you. More rules, more regulations. And if you're not deprived and you're the middle class, you just find it very irritating and, you know, no more acceptable than religious imposition of values and morals and so forth. But of course the leaders of society keep up a good face that it's with good intention, and what else is there? How true. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.